Here's a fact that every school leader is forced to confront. Keeping teachers in our profession has become a bit of a challenge. And here's the issue. Most schools don't lose new teachers because they can't teach.
They lose them because they don't feel supported.
And the scary part, a lot of schools think that they're actually supporting new teachers.
But what they're actually doing is overwhelming them.
So the question is, what do new teachers really need right now? This is about to be a real honest conversation about supporting beginning teachers.
And if you lead people, even one teacher, you're going to want to hear this. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Mario.
And this is the Ed Leadership Pair podcast.
Today we have a very special episode with a very special guest. We are blessed to interact with Dr. Tina Boogren. Tina is the author of numerous best-selling books centered around her passion areas, which include quality instruction, supporting beginning teachers, and educator wellness. Dr. Boogren has received many accolades, including being ranked number 5 among the top 30 global gurus in education. She is also the recipient of the Marquis Who's Who of Professional Women Award and has been recognized by the Wall Street Journal as a who's who of distinguished leaders. Dr. Boogren is not only a world-class educator, but Courtney and I are blessed to call her a really good friend. And so today we bring you the gift of this top-notch educator and everything she's willing to share from that wonderful educational brain.
Dr. Boogren, we are so excited to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. This has been a long time coming. So thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are, of course, this week coming up is Teacher Appreciation Week. And we want to make sure that we give a huge shout out to all our teachers, our teacher leaders, and, you know, all the educators that are impacting students on the daily. And so I'd love to start out and just hear a little bit from you about your favorite teacher ever and why, and who is that person?
Oh, I love that question. Here, I'm lucky enough to think of multiple teachers, like across, and I'm using the word teacher like as mentor, everyone just across the board. Yep. But that initial, when you first said that, so it takes me back to high school and Mrs. Spencer, so Patty Spencer. In fact, my very first book, Supporting Beginning Teachers, she was one of the people that I dedicated it to. She was an English teacher as the most perfect English teacher. I feel like we read books that I loved. It's where I was introduced to The Catcher in the Rye, which is still my favorite book in the world. And we did journaling, and she just instilled a true love for reading and writing that I had from years prior. I also had a Mrs. Gorman that told me in 3rd grade that I was going to be a writer. Like, I've had great teachers along the way, but there was something about her that just instilled this like magic of teaching. And I think what Mrs. Spencer did was opened up the idea of not just loving reading and writing, but becoming an English teacher. So she loved her job so much. And I don't come from a family of teachers. That's not part of kind of my background. And so watching her teach, I think opened something up in my brain of like, oh, how about talking about reading and writing with students, like that piece? And I didn't recognize it then. That was senior year of high school. I started at University of Iowa as an English major and stuck through English major for the first 3 years. And then finally, my last year was like, what job am I going to get? What actual job? And I had a moment of panic. And then I think my brain was like, oh, remember that teaching thing?
That's
and
a thing.
So I think without her directly saying it, I think that's what opened up. Oh, I watched someone love what they do so much. And oh my gosh, if I could spend my day talking about reading and writing, what a gift that would be. So that's who stands out to me. But man, I was lucky enough to have great teachers along the way.
I love that. Yeah. And I love it that Miss Patty Spencer had such an impact on you that actually, yes, you did become a writer and you did become an English teacher and you are an avid reader. You don't read the trash that I read. We've had conversations about this, but you read like real books that have emotional, this like, pull you in. And so it's really impressive. And I love hearing about that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Yes.
not only you speaking about the teachers that have impacted you, but we also would like to just give you a little bit of an opportunity here for any of our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with you. We mentioned in the open that you are one of the top educators in the United States of America, consistently ranked inside of the top 5 on Global Guru's most impactful
'Cause she
educators.
fancy.
Very fancy. Also, for anybody who hasn't heard of Dr. Boogren, well, if you listen to this show, you have, because we reference
They
Tina's
talk about
work
her all the
about
time.
every other episode. But just, just to name a few of your books, 180 Days of Self-Care, Educator Wellness, which you co-authored with Tim Canel, of course, a brand new book that you just put out within the last month, I think a few weeks or less, the Beginning Teacher's Field Guide, a second edition. So for those people not familiar with Tina, she's going to talk to us today about really those areas of expertise you have crafted over the years. And so we're really excited for you to share that expertise with us, and would just love for you, if you're willing to kind of talk to us a little bit about the work you do and let our listeners just get a little intro. If for some reason somebody's been living under a rock and doesn't know who Dr. Boogren is, just give us a quick sort of summary on your work and how you landed here and what impacts you see happening in the field.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'll do the short version. So, I started out as a teacher, so starting way back, middle school, high school level, mainly at the middle school level, 7th and 8th grade. Moved from there as an instructional coach, which I absolutely loved. It was like a dream job. And then we lost all our funding for that, which, as we know, happens. Moved into administration, spent a year as an assistant principal at the middle school level. And then this job opened up at Marzano Resources. I won't get into all of the details. It's one of those who you know and timing and everything else. So I started at Marzano Resources. Back then it was Marzano Research, leading a major research project with Dr. Marzano on what works in Oklahoma schools. So I spent a year doing that, and that lined up right when I was working on my PhD. So to live that doing actual research with an actual researcher while I was taking classes, learning about research was kind of a gift that you couldn't have asked for. Like, it just happened, and it was wonderful. And at the end of that year, I got to travel and present the results. And Bob said, "Oh, you're really good at this presenting thing," which may have been, "You're not so good at the research, but you're good." I was doing qualitative research. Bob is Mr. Quantitative Research. So I learned a lot. And I said, "Yes, please let me present." So I moved over into the role of working as an associate for Dr. Marzano. And that's where I really took a deep dive into all of the instructional pieces. That's what lit me up, without a doubt. At the time, it was the art and science of teaching, and then it transitioned to the new art and science of teaching. But I was really just doing that work, a little bit of the highly engaged classroom, but really focused on instruction. And at some point I came back to Bob and I said, what are we going to do about the new teachers? Because every time I present this framework, they kind of hit this panic mode of it's a little bit overwhelming. And to Bob's credit, he said, "I don't know, figure it out." And so I said, okay. And that was where supporting beginning teachers came from. I started with the lens of, how would a mentor or a leader in a building help take this incredible framework, but make it meaningful and like streamline it for a beginning educator? So it started there. And then I thought, okay, so what if you're a new teacher and you don't have a mentor to lead you through this? How do you make sense of that? And that's where the Beginning Teacher's Field Guide came in. And the Beginning Teacher's Field Guide had a piece of wellness because I couldn't find in any other existing literature for new teacher anything beyond like a sentence that said, "Oh, and don't forget to take care of yourself."
Also drink the water.
And so I was like, let's get a little bit more specific there. So I started talking about self-care strategies way before COVID, way before anyone would ever think about this. And it showed up in the first Beginning Teacher's Field Guide. And that's what people kind of latched onto. And then from there, things just kind of spread. So around the same time, I was working on Motivating and Inspiring Students, the book with Bob, and I was burning out myself. And I knew something had to change. So I took the structure we used for motivating and inspiring students, which was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and applied it to myself. I did a research study with an N of one of I'm embedded in this research for kids. So much of this isn't just for kids. And so that's where the book Take Time for You came out, which was kind of my story of burning out and what I needed to do to make those changes. And then from there, really took a nosedive into all of the research around the whole wellness piece. At the time, no one was really talking about it. And I wanted to make it bite-sized and manageable. I didn't want it at the time to feel like this big, overwhelming framework. It was more just like the things that worked for me personally were tiny little changes. You don't have to burn your whole life down. It was like those small little things. And so that kind of birthed 180 Days books. Then COVID happened. And then everyone wanted to talk about wellness in ways that I had not seen before. Before it was like, and it was fine. People would say, we want you to come talk about instruction. If there's any time left over at the end, you can do that self-care stuff. But really, we want you to talk about instruction. And yeah, but we're not seeing that connection. So it's just been this kind of natural progression along the way of, like anything, where I am now, I can look back and see the path. But as I was on it, it wasn't this deliberate. It was just kind of chasing what I was seeing in the field as really what people were hungry for. And then thinking about my own life as an educator, living alongside the people that I am working with and what were those basic needs that we needed. And so it's just been this fun. I'm always up for a challenge. I'm the nerdiest nerd in the wanting to learn new things. So something piques my interest and I will go down that rabbit hole for a long time. And the wellness piece really sparked something in me that I have really taken a nosedive into. That's been really fun.
That's so awesome. What a good story and what a good progression of how you got. And I know there's so much more work that you have planned to do as well in the wellness area. And so I'm really excited to see what continues on. So you are traveling the country constantly and you are seeing new teachers, veteran teachers, new administrators, veteran admin. What do you see right now across the country that new teachers actually need that they're not getting in enough time?
Yeah, it varies, as you guys both know, it varies wildly depending on where you are and who you're working with. But in a general sense, a couple of things stand out to me with new teachers. We're completely overwhelming them. We're not doing it on purpose. No one is trying to. We are in the name of giving them information, we are drowning them. And the places that I see success with new teachers are places that are able to kind of get some of the nonsense out, just streamline, focus here. And really being thoughtful around we need fewer initiatives, we need fewer meetings, how do we make this sustainable? And really differentiating how we support our beginning educators versus our veteran staff. That's a totally different needs that they have. So I think that's one of the main things is how do we give our new teachers permission to let some things go and help them because their brains cannot handle it. Their brains are literally overwhelmed with decision fatigue. So one of the gifts we give them is to say, focus here. And I would also say to start support on instruction year one. We are typically really good at the emotional check-ins, right? And the making sure that we've got the physical support, the supplies, but we often, in the name of not wanting to bombard new teachers, we avoid the instruction. And I think that's a big mistake. So the sooner that we can give feedback beyond you're doing a good job or focus more on classroom management and get at a specific strategy level where you are coaching them in their expertise starting in the first year, I think the better off we are.
That's interesting.
Because at the end of the day, what a new teacher, at the end of the day, what the studies will say, and I always summarize it this way, this is Tina's very, very simplified version, but if you take teacher A and teacher B, and they have the same first year experience, so the same students, the same demographics, same class size, same curriculum, everything, all things being the same, if teacher A does not feel like they made a difference in the lives of their students, they will quit. But they will not say that they're quitting because they didn't feel like they made a difference in the lives of the students. They will say they're quitting because of class size or curriculum or lack of support. And if teacher B then has those same pieces, but feels like they made a difference, they will stay. And so one of the things we need to do is help make sure that beginning teachers feel that support, and that support is instruction, that they see that their students are being successful. And I think we miss that sometimes.
So do you think ultimately teachers are measuring their own success based on really just that one data point of whether or not they feel like they have made a difference for their students? That's it?
There's so much underneath that, but when they get down to like, okay, am I going to stay in this job or not? Because most new teachers, most of us got in some form, we would say something like, why did we become a teacher? To make a difference in the lives of students. And that takes a lot of different forms, right? It's certainly not for the money. It's not for the fame, although we know that's great. Just kidding, right? Instead, it's something typically to do with making a difference in the lives of students. And so if that is in the back of their mind and they get towards the end of the year and they feel like they haven't made a difference at all, or they've gone backwards, that feels really hard. And that's often a hard thing to admit to, maybe to themselves, but out loud, they're going to say, and this is based on the research, they're going to say it's because of the class size and the student behavior and the lack of support, which may all be legitimate. But what's happening in their own mind is the thing of, gosh, I came into this to make a difference. Is if I'm not feeling that, then what am I doing? Because the job's too hard.
Wow.
Yeah. So then, if that's the case, and I think it's a really brilliant identification of the fact that when we think of new teacher support, we think of those lunch meetings we have once a quarter or whatever, and we got to check, like you said, on do they know all the logistics? Have they been oriented to the school and all of that? But you're kind of saying, look, while those things help, what really matters is that they're successful in the classroom. So then would you paint that picture from the lens of a leader? So how does a leader create a system to maybe better foster those instructional supports and making sure that teachers actually feel that success? So like you just painted the picture from the individual teacher level. If a leader's listening and maybe they have a moment of, oh man, I don't know if I'm doing that. Maybe could you give our leaders that are listening some like, look, here's what you can do to help your teachers feel more like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the structure I talk about in the book Supporting Beginning Teachers, and it's the notion that new teachers need 4 types of support. So physical, which is getting your classroom set up, the keys, the passwords. Typically, schools do a great job of this. So physical support. Institutional support, which is understanding your school, your community, your district, getting launched into different networks, going to professional development. Typically, we do a pretty good job of that one as well. And then the last 2 supports, so your emotional support, and this is what I would call the wellness piece and the instructional support. And those 2 types of support, my argument is that new teachers need them especially, but then teachers need that support for the rest of their career. And those 2 types of support, so let me go back to the 4 types. As a leader, just making sure that your new teachers have all 4 types of support. There's differentiation among there as well, because there is a difference between a brand new, and I say this with love, I call them baby teachers, and I mean that in the best way. So your brand new baby teacher versus a teacher coming from somewhere else that has years of experience. And that's where the 4 types of support are nice, because you can think through that lens, because a veteran teacher just new to your building may not need as much of a certain type of support, may not need as much institutional support. Say they're coming from a high reliability school, moving to another one, they've got that language, they understand it, but they might need a little bit of physical support, but not really. They've got their things that they have in their classroom. So that lens just as a leader helps to make sure that we've hit those 4 points. And then the most essential of those 4 types of support is instructional. And that's the piece that is so often missing. We will do instructional support in terms of we'll hand them curriculum or hand them a textbook, something, and call it good. And our instructional support just lines up with our model that we utilize at Marzano Resources, which is a very specific type of coaching and support based on an instructional framework. So in other words, it's not coming in and scripting a lesson and saying you're doing a good job. It's helping new teachers select a specific goal from the framework, and a mentor or a leader can help do that if that feels out of reach for a beginning teacher, and then presenting them the developmental scale of their use of that strategy, where they go from not using a strategy to the beginning level, how they move from the beginning level up those different levels. Then a knowledgeable coach or mentor can do that. So when I work with schools and leaders, that 4 types of support, what I say is the first 3, so the physical, institutional, and emotional, can be anyone in the building, someone that shows interest. It can be spread out. There's a lot of benefits of having multiple arms around a new teacher instead of putting it all on one person. But the leader has to be thoughtful in choosing who provides that instructional support, and that should be an instructional leader. So what a lot of places do, they will use language of mentoring versus coaching. So they will assign a mentor to the new teacher who is responsible for physical, institutional, and emotional support. And they have the tools to be able to do that. And then a coach will provide the instructional support. In an ideal setting, because I recognize it looks different in every school, but if you have an instructional coach, that person is a recognized expert in terms of instructional leadership and understanding of the instructional framework, that person helping a beginning teacher from year 1, the very beginning, is absolutely essential because that helps find that success. And when they have an instructional framework, of course, we love ours, the Marzano New Art and Science of Teaching, that gives that roadmap to follow. So help a new teacher get the things like your rules and procedures, building relationships, engagement strategies. And so a specialized person knows that framework well enough to help direct the new teacher and utilize those developmental scales for them to see progress very quickly. And that progress is going to alert that signal in your brain of like, oh, look, I can actually see myself getting better. And in our model, when you get better as a teacher, ideally, then the students, you're going to see that impact, the effect size increase. And so they're meeting that need of like making a difference. We can watch it happen in real time. That's the beauty of having a very specific instructional coach working with all teachers, but particularly new teachers, and a mentor who does the other stuff that's also important, but isn't directly tied to student achievement. So your physical support, your emotional, and your institutional support.
And I could see that being hugely beneficial to the teachers who are supporting, or whoever is supporting the new teachers, to say, your role as a mentor is to support the physical, institutional, emotional, and stay in this lane. This is where you need to live to help them with the area that you are supporting them in. And then have a totally separate person that is working on the coaching side for instruction. I could see that being a massive benefit, because previously in another life, when we had teachers that were mentoring it was all in one. It was just this big, massive bucket. And it's like, oh, you're going to meet with them once a week or every other week or whatever it is, and just help them. And that's kind of that's what you say. You're support them, but there's no real tangible way to describe what that support looks like. But when you break it into those 4 areas, it makes it really clear.
Yeah. And I've seen schools do this so successfully. They have one Google Doc, and then the mentor and the coach can go in there so they know exactly what they're working on. And what I love about it too is it just, like I said, puts more arms around new teachers, because we've all seen it a million times. We do this random pairing of mentor and new teacher, and it doesn't work. And for no other reason than it's just not a personality match. It's just, we put them in this like first blind date and expect them to be married. And the problem is no one's doing anything wrong. It just is it's a mismatch. I mean, I work with places where they do like a speed dating. We don't call it that, but they bring your mentors and your new teachers in for a breakfast, let everyone just naturally talk, and then list who would you like to have as your mentor, right? Who did you kind of click with, so we can start to do some more thoughtful pairing together. But then, so if you're working with at least like a mentor and a coach, you've got two people to come to for various things, and just having some sort of, like I said, Google Doc is an easy way to do it. Have just where, and all three can be part of it too, of just here's what we're working on, and keeping that track of different things. In supporting beginning teachers in the book, I give all sorts of sample strategies for each type of support. So as you said, this is the lane. I've worked with places that they have different people for each type of support because they're stretched so thin. So if you think about like physical support, getting the classroom set up, getting, everything ready to go. If you think about a staff, you can recognize, your teachers that have super good, like that their organization of their classroom is great, and they could help with that specific piece and then be done, right? Yeah. Or help, like, here's a sample lesson plan for your subs, like do something like that, where, because I don't think anyone doesn't want to help new teachers. They're just stretched too thin. Yeah. But if you have this lens of like, okay, I can do these things, boom, step out of the way, but put it in this Google Doc so we make sure that we're meeting all of these needs. But it just kind of helps with an already stretched out staff. Or I work places that, the entire staff has less than 5 years of experience. Like, so we have a whole bunch of new teachers, and then we put our fourth year mentoring a second year, and it just feels too hard. So if we can kind of just remove some of those obstacles, it can be really helpful, especially for leaders, because then as leaders, it takes it off of your plate as well, in terms of recognizing, I have identified these are the people that I've entrusted with this. I've trained them. I can let them shine here. Instructional leaders, here's the framework and the model that you use with new teachers. And mentors, here's the exact framework, what we are dipping into to make sure we're meeting all of those needs and having those check-ins, but without having to do all of that on the leader's shoulders.
Yeah.
So Tina, what this makes me think of is episode number 14. Courtney and I painted an entire picture for a school leader. How do you lead instruction? And we had kind of a 5-point model that began with having an instructional vision and defining what the components of effective instruction are. And then we talked about, in that process, there's monitoring, and then there's feedback, and there's coaching, and then there's reflection. And what I love that you're connecting here to is you can have people on your staff who are good mentors, maybe in the institutional, maybe in the emotional, but I don't know that I want everybody coaching the actual instructional piece. So I might be able to, whether I have a coach that does that, or maybe I have like 2 or 3 just bad A teachers. And I'm like, look, you 2 or 3 bad A teachers, you're going to do the instructional part for all the newbies. Maybe there's 5 newbies. And everybody else is going to then get a mentor who's going to handle the physical, the institutional, the emotional. So I love the connection to the instructional program, and to say we've got to grow teachers instructionally, and we've got to support them in these other 3 facets that are equally important. And that's that blows my mind as a school leader, because I'm like, now I don't have to have the old model of one mentor, one teacher. Because what if I don't want that one mentor teaching this teacher instruction?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
It might be, look, they're great. They're great. They'll tell you how to manage your time.
Sentinel.
They might be a good sentinel.
And you want to scout doing more of the instructional piece.
Yeah.
Yes. And it honors, there's 2 things happening there. All of that you said, and it honors some of your staff that doesn't necessarily get honored. I think a lot of institutional support, so your staff that knows the ins and outs of that building and that all the history, and And there is a gift of saying, you hold this legacy and this history. Can you provide that to new
Yeah.
teachers? And that feels really good
Yeah.
to them, because sometimes they feel a little left out to pasture. And it's a way to say, let's honor this that you have. And you as a leader are saying, and just that, no instruction necessarily, no,
Yeah.
right? But you've got those clear, and it just is as you and all of us love thinking about school culture, school climate, those day-to-day interactions. And it's a way to kind of tap into, if you can get your entire staff to say, yes, we believe that supporting new teachers is important, attracting them and retaining them is important, then how do we all commit to doing a little bit to help support them? And that just taps into different areas of expertise. You think about many places have wellness committees now, which is great. Have them take the wellness piece, the emotional support, run with it. Or you have, I love them so much, your mama bears and papa bears that do it naturally, and honor them for that, and say, here's a little structure to what that support can look like, as we've laid out these kind of different strategies. So yes, there's just advantages to just rethinking that program to take a little bit off one person's shoulders.
Yeah. And Courtney made the connection just 2 weeks ago. Courtney and I did an episode about supporting veteran teachers. Knowing you were going to come in here and
Nice.
talk a lot about new teachers, what you're saying is the sentinels, who are the keepers of our culture, the ones who know our past and know the institution, they're great mentors for that institutional part of the framework. But maybe instructionally, and maybe they are, but maybe they're not. Yeah. Maybe a scout is a better instructional mentor, and being able to just, as a leader now, take some of these concepts and start to say,
coach on them.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Before we move on, our oldest daughter is finishing up her sophomore year, and she is an elementary education major. So what would be your advice for her going into interviews? What should she be asking a school leader that will tell her whether or not they're going to be supporting her as a first or early year teacher?
Yes, what a great question. First of all, I just want to honor, I love this so much. In a time where I hear so many educators saying that they would not push their own kids to become educators, nothing breaks my heart more, right? I still believe in this profession. I believe in the work. I have one of my best friends from back home. Her daughter is student teaching right now, elementary ed. I could not love it more. So kudos. And what a great question, that empowerment piece that I feel like my generation did not have going into an interview to make sure that it's a good match, right? We just said we would do anything and everything.
Just give me a job. It's
great. Work weekends, you bet. Absolutely. Coach cheerleading all day long.
Council?
I mean, I said yes to all of it. Yes. Write the yearbook. Why wouldn't I? So yes. So it would depend on some core values, right, of what is important to her. But one of the things that I always recommend is just ask about the mentoring program. Number one, is there a mentoring program? What does support look like? And what she's listening for is something beyond just the new teacher orientation, right? In an ideal world, it would be what we just described as this like really thorough support. I don't know that we always walk into that, but at the very least, that a leader has thought beyond new teacher orientation. Because you would be surprised how many places call their support new teacher orientation, which is the one day that they have before kids come. Or they might hand them the Harry Wong book, which is fantastic, but that is not mentoring. So the advice is to listen for thoughtfulness around supporting the newest educators, and hopefully language around, because we want to welcome you, we want to support you, and we want to retain you. We want you to want to be here. The message that I give to leaders in talking with new teachers, especially on the new teacher orientation day, is the same advice that I give to teachers thinking about students on the first day of school, is that you want your new teachers to want to come back tomorrow. Or you want your students to come back tomorrow. And if you're just overwhelming them with all the things that their brain literally cannot hold on to because they are not safe yet, that's not going to make them want to come back tomorrow. So how do we help them to feel welcome and supported and excited to think, oh my gosh, I am working at the best school in the best district. I'm so excited. So to be listening for some of that, I think is so important. And I think the question is just, how do you support your beginning educators?
Thank you.
Yeah, great advice. And Carly does listen, and so we'll make sure that she's getting her questions.
She'll take her
ready.
notes.
Yep.
She's a good note taker.
Of course, because she's going to be an elementary teacher.
The girl she did YMCA this past summer and did the YMCA camp. I think she might be the only person I've ever heard of that was like jazzed and excited and loving every minute of YMCA camp out in the Texas heat with these kids. And she would come home and tell us about the rules and procedures that she used. Before you can get up, you have to have your place clean, and you have to have your water bottle on top of your head so that, she could see visually who was ready and who wasn't. And the kids thought it was fun. Like, she just had made up all these little
I would fight to have her in my building.
She will be amazing. So when she's ready to go, we'll announce it on the podcast. Yes. And anybody that is needing,
exactly.
I think she said 1st and 2nd grade, we'll let everyone know, and then we can start the bidding war.
We'll start a bidding war. Uh-huh.
Yeah, since that works out really well in public education. Yeah.
It does.
Wow, Tina, so thank you for sharing your expertise with us about how leaders can really rethink the way we support beginning teachers. And you mentioned the reference of your book, Supporting Beginning Teachers, but I also want to make sure our listeners know that you have a brand new book out, The Beginning Teachers Field Guide, 2nd edition. And so I don't know if you want to just tell us very quickly, what are some new things you put into this new edition that people might want to go grab as a good resource when they're thinking about building these new teacher support programs and systems?
Yeah, thank you. So this one is co-authored with one of my associates, Adrienne Turner, who's still working in a school system, which is really great because she's on the ground working. So it follows the same structure as the first edition of the book, where we follow Ellen Moore's phases. The additions to this book that I'm so excited about is we added more strategies in terms of classroom and instructional strategies. We put the wellness strategies first at the end of each of these phases because we want people to really focus on wellness. We updated all of those. We added tips for neurodivergent educators. We added tips from teachers to teachers. So we just got a sampling of veteran educators giving their best pieces of advice for each of the phases. So it's coming teacher to teacher advice is what we talk about in there. And Adrienne's voice comes out in some of the essays at the beginning as well, which is really great. So it's a pretty substantial update from the first edition to the second edition, which we're really, really proud of.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Very cool.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So Dr. Boogren, as we close this episode, and we're excited that you are going to join us again for a future episode with a new topic, but we want our listeners to know that you can access all of Tina's resources at tinabogren.com, including a link to her weekly podcast titled Everyday Wellness with Dr. Tina H. Boogren.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Boogren, for being with us today.
It was my pleasure, you guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm deeply honored.
All right. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Mario.
And this is the Ed Leadership Pair Podcast.
Thanks for listening.